Good luck with that for most. As a result, the trend of people successfully escaping out of North Korea began dwindling downwards with every passing year after Kim Jong-un took power, as it became increasingly difficult for people to do so. By 2019, only a total of 1,047 North Koreans managed to get out of the country to South Korea, less than half of the numbers that had gotten out back at the beginning of the decade in 2010 and 2011. And then, beginning in 2020, the ability to escape from North Korea became even more bleak than it had been before. In January of 2020, only 2 months after the very first reported case of COVID-19 was made in China back in November, North Korea became the very first country in the world to completely shut down and seal all of its borders, citing its desire to keep the virus out of the country at all costs. Basically, all travel into and out of the country was shut down, every international flight that North Korea had was immediately canceled, and nearly all foreign trade with the outside world was halted. And at first glance, it kind of makes sense why North Korea was so paranoid so early about the virus. This is a country where it is estimated that around 42% of the population are currently considered to be malnourished, one of the highest levels of malnutrition seen anywhere in the contemporary world, and of course, malnourished people are significantly more susceptible to the negative effects caused by COVID-19 than otherwise healthy people are. North Korea would only end up reporting its first confirmed case of the virus on the 12th of May 2022, and only 3 months later in August, the regime had already self-declared its victory over eradicating it from the country, with only a very minimal 74 officially reported COVID-related deaths. But the reality was almost certainly a lot worse than that. Anonymous inside doctors and sources reporting to the BBC this year claimed that about 1 in 550 people in Pyongyang actually died from COVID during that outbreak in 2022. If that source is accurate, which honestly, who knows, and if you extrapolated it out to the rest of the country, it would suggest a potential COVID-19 related death toll in North Korea of around 45,000. Orders of magnitude worse than the officially reported number of only 74, though I suggest that that should be heavily treated with a grain of salt. But regardless, the North Korean regime was almost certainly genuinely worried about COVID-19 getting into the country. But they also have clearly capitalized on the pandemic as an excuse to finally finish locking down North Korean society and fully isolating it from the rest of the outside world. In August of 2020, the regime established so-called buffer zones on their northern borders with China and Russia, while firm orders were given out to North Korean soldiers patrolling the borders to unconditionally shoot anybody on sight attempting to either enter or leave without permission. A shoot-to-kill order that evidently continues to remain in force more than 3 years later now today. Moreover, the North Korean regime seized on the excuse of protecting the country from COVID-19 to construct a series of vast new fortifications all across the borders with China and Russia. Satellite imagery has revealed hundreds of kilometers worth of newly constructed walls, fences, barbed wire, and guard posts being constructed all along North Korea's northern border since the pandemic began, all of which have seemingly sealed off nearly all of the historical mountain passes and routes the defectors and smugglers alike have taken into and out of the country for decades. The once porous northern border has since become mostly solid, and hardly anything or anyone is crossing it at all now. But building out these vast new fortifications in the north with strict shoot-to-kill orders is not the only way that the regime has been making it increasingly impossible for any of its 25 million remaining subjects to escape. Much harsher restrictions have also been put into place on domestic travel within the country, meaning that North Koreans need proper authorization and paperwork simply to travel from province to province. And if you get caught without them, it's straight to one of the country's many prison camps. In December of 2020, the North Korean regime passed a new law called the Reactionary Ideology and Culture Rejection Act, which heavily criminalizes receiving any information or object from the outside world, and bans anyone from possessing a non-government sanctioned cell phone.